first study for you this week, coming from Natalie, is about conflict and crisis management strategies and the importance of handling them appropriately. And so this study looked at first, how do conflict and crisis affect an organization? And then two, what is the role of management processes and how do they impact the outcome? And so the methods of this study were they provided a general and conceptual overview of how both conflict and crises are regular occurrences in organizations and just in life. They explain what the difference between conflict and crises are and perform a more in-depth evaluation of conflict and what causes it, the kinds of conflict that exists, conflict management techniques, and then on the other hand, what qualifies as a crisis, the type of crises that most often occur, and then a look at Hugh and Spillin's crisis management strategies. And then finally, they end with noting the importance of management strategies to mitigate the damage that can occur from conflict and crisis. And kind of in a more overview of what this led to was that conflict and crisis can greatly impact an organization, even to the point of closure. They note that conflict is primarily instigated by people, whereas crisis can be instigated by either people or nature, and that conflict can have positive outcomes and contribute to innovation and collaboration, whereas crisis often is only negative, at times with much more severe consequences than conflict. And then finally, the way that both conflict and crisis is managed can make all the difference in whether there's a positive resolution or simply avoiding severe negative consequences, or whether the damage is potentially irreversible. And so Natalie took a few key takeaways from this, one being that conflict and crisis are kind of unavoidable aspects of work life and organizations and can occur naturally. And so leaders need to be aware of the appropriate timely management strategies for both conflict and crisis and then act accordingly. And they should also have an awareness of how to best prevent conflict and crisis from occurring where possible. And finally, she noted that not appropriately resolving conflict or crisis can have long-term negative consequences that can impact the overall organization's well-being. And I think this points to a lot of the tangible items of training and coaching and all of those different things that can help people build up their skills for dealing with conflict and even sometimes coping with crisis. So that's what we have for this one.
Interesting to see kind of the juxtaposition of conflict and crisis. And so the second bullet on the results, I'm interested in talking a little bit about that, right? So it's basically saying that crisis is more, it says either people or nature, but kind of saying that it's beyond one's control, similar to what we were just talking about, Tony. Whereas conflict is kind of more, it stems from the individuals, like the people involved, and crisis can be more of the environment. Is that basically what this study, this kind of overview pulled out? That's the result?
I think that's kind of the big overview. It's just looking at what's the difference. And I'd be interested to looking at kind of, to your point of the difference between these two, looking at how that changes with like resolution or management strategies,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, conflict can also be something, that's instigated from the nature, right? Especially like a task conflict. It might not be the individuals at hand within an organization. It might be the operating procedures that are not standardized, or the more of like the structure and not the person.
I would agree. What this really made me think about was the beginning of the pandemic, when everything shut down, and how most workplaces were unprepared. So they were unprepared for their employees to be working virtually. They were unprepared to be able to conduct business with the pandemic. And that resulted in conflicts because there were so many unknowns, and it was a crisis, and it wasn't necessarily of, all the organization's doings, but it affected everyone. And one of the things that I think that most entities learned is that we've got to plan for crises. And those, I think that the companies that have tried to do that and then have adapted will be able to eliminate conflicts that result from those sorts of unknowns and those sorts of crises in the future. And then sadly, you know, the ones that weren't able to adapt and weren't able to make the changes that needed to be made quickly enough, you know, have already faltered and probably will continue to do so. But I remember like talking to people, and the unknowns was what was so hard, particularly for like people, you know, employees, like, you know, I'm working from home, but I don't have the proper equipment, or I don't have, you know, the type of, you know, power, Wi-Fi, that kind of thing that I need. I don't know when we're going back, or people that were being forced to go into offices, but didn't feel safe. And so, you know, all of that led to conflict. And then even like now where you have people saying, okay, we're going to go back into the office, but then you have like, well, I don't want to go back into the office. I'm performing well from home. Why do I have to go back into the office? And so that's a big thing now, is determining who goes back, why, when, you know, but it's all the result of the crisis of the pandemic that we're under.
Yeah, and the lack of the kind of proper preparation of organizations and companies kind of worldwide that weren't prepared to constructively deal with change management and crisis response, which is, you know, where I think our services and a lot of, you know, conflict resolution practitioners stand out, is they're trying not only to help people, you know, respond to a current conflict or current challenges that exist in the moment, but preventative services, right?
Right. And even learning how to have the conversation, learning how to sit and talk and share ideas and plan and listen to one another, so that they can put effective and meaningful, you know, plans of action in place. And especially now with the political climate the way it is. I mean, a lot of these are hard conversations, you know. Do we make people come back into the workplace? If they come back to the workplace, can we mandate that they be vaccinated? Can we mandate that they wear masks in our workplace? I mean, these are conversations people are having to have right now, and lots of people don't know how to have them.
Well said, Tony. Yeah, I mean, we're in this, the crisis is still, of COVID, right, of this global pandemic, the crisis is still present. And, you know, companies are now struggling to, I mean, not even now, but continuing to struggle with, you know, what do we do? How do we go back into the office?
Yeah, the office, our schools, you know, colleges and universities, it's even churches, you know, all of these are entities, all of these are organizations that are having to deal with the same crises and the results of the same crises. And it's new ground for most of us. I don't know that many people that have, you know, currently living that have already survived the pandemic. So it's new for all of us. And where we come in is that we can help people talk. We can help people talk and learn to listen better. And that's kind of key to avoiding and resolving lots of this conflict, and particularly the listening part.